efforts that COPIGI was initiating or contributing is the code of conduct on how we all should behave when we work with farmers' data. And I know, Daniel, you or your family is also farming in Portugal. So you have a very first opinion, first in mind opinion about how to do this, I think. The floor is yours, Daniel. Go ahead.
Just want to double check you can hear me and see the presentation. Brilliant.
Both.
And thank you for the introduction. And in fact, I'm a privilege to be here, coming from my family background, to be here representing the views of 22 million farmers and their families, and 22,000 cooperatives across Europe. I'm trying to change. Yes, I think it's moving. This is perfect. And yeah, I'm coming from the north of Portugal, and my family, and trust me, we have a big family in Portugal. We like these big families, and most of them, they work on olives and always on wine, which is delicious. You have to trust me on that. And so it's a privilege for me to be their voice here, talking about the interests of European farmers and cooperatives and the interest on digital. And I would like also to thank the previous two speakers, because it was very interesting. There are two of the key issues that we have been advocating in terms of digital, the relationship and the simplification of the relationship with the public administration to enable full compliance, and also to use the data that is already available and provided by some of the tools that are there, satellite, but also the data that has been stored for sometimes centuries with the public administration. That will be very useful to take some decisions. And of course, all the systems that we have seen from John Deere, they look very futuristic, but this is no longer the future. This is reality in the farming. So I would just like to take a couple of minutes to introduce you to both COPA and COGECA, two different organizations, but working very close together. We try to have consensual positions on behalf of the European farming. And COPA represents the interests of the 22 million farmers and family members across Europe, and the COGECA represents the interest of 22,000 European agri-cooperatives. Together, we have a secretariat in Brussels. We are about 50 staff people working in 7 different languages. So all our positions are available in our website in these languages. We'll be very happy to have you there visiting and having an interest on our work. So where do we come from on digital? I think this is important. The first point I would like to make is the importance of EU policies, and we have been very supportive of the Common Agriculture Policy, and therefore we really appreciate the efforts that have been done in order to simplify and modernize and to provide farmers with these new tools that will allow for full compliance. I think this is very important. The Common Agriculture Policy has been delivering for over 50 years. In terms of affordable nutritious food, but also in terms of food security, which worked quite well during the COVID-19 pandemic, and is still working, where farmers will never stop working, and they are still providing European with food, constant food these days. Then, of course, we are very committed with the climate change and the objective of 1.5 degrees. There are no climate deniers within the farming community. We understand climate change. We see there's effects in the farms every day, and we are looking forward to some of the tools to help us to mitigate these effects and also to contribute to fight climate change. And here, new technologies and digital are one of the tools that can help us to achieve that. And of course, the Green Deal, it's a great opportunity, but we will need to have a current and supportive framework. We need to ensure that farmers will be enabled to invest in their farms in order to achieve these ambitious objectives. The digital single market, we also been very supportive. That's why we have worked so hard on the digital and in terms of data, the data framework. So our key message is please enable our investment on modernization in order to achieve the sustainability. So I will not spend a lot of time on this slide. We have seen just two great examples of how technology can deliver. But the most important is that the farmers will not invest in technology for the sake of technology. It will invest if it provides the value and the tools that we are looking for. And maybe some of the technologies that I would like to underline are already there. The previous presentation has shown. We have seen also in terms of sensors for production, cameras, but we need to have access to the latest technology, and we see some potential, for example, on drones, some potential on artificial intelligence, some potential on robotics that will be available soon, and that will use some of this data that is created, and it will be very helpful to for two reasons. The first, to help us to process all that data and provide some support decision-making systems to the farmers, so the farmers will take the decision themselves. They will not be replaced. The second is also to provide this data and the possibility for the robots to take their own decision and navigate across the farm. They will need to have real data at real time and process this data to make sure that they will not do any funny thing in the fields. So these technologies will also be crucial. We are very pleased to see already the first results of the Copernicus and Galileo, an investment done by the European Union, an investment that also used some of the funds from the CAP in the past. And we are very happy to see this delivering, and we hope that they will continue providing results for farmers and cooperatives. Then the impact of technologies and data will not take place only at the farm level. As mentioned by the previous speaker, one of the important aspects will be the possibility for digital technologies to enable online applications for payments, for pre-fillings, for early warning, simplify official controls, but most important, enable and help farmers to increase compliance. And I think this is a common objective across the society, and it's something that we see some potential. But we also see potential to improve the functioning in the food chain, to find new markets. Today, the European farmers have very little tools to provide further information to the consumer. The consumer wants to know more how we do things. And some of the digital technologies will enable the farmers to provide some of the information, some of the data. And the other way around as well, that we will need to know along the food chain, but also from the consumer, we need to have access to the data that is created and provided, so that we can make changes in the farm that will be in line with the consumer expectations, for example. And also very important is to improve the life conditions of the farmers and their families. We see now already the impact of robots that are helping to organize the work of the farmer so that he can actually have breakfast with their kids in the morning. But there is always two sides of the same aspect of technology. It is helping the farmers to achieve better results with the robots, but if the farmer doesn't pay attention to the work of the robots and they only trust on the data, he might miss important things. So it is the role of the farmer will remain extremely important in this area. It will not be replaced, but technology must provide the clear benefits for the farmer. It must deliver. But this you already had a very good taste. Now, what do we need to have in place to ensure that we will reap the benefits of the technology of digital? First of all, it's not the technology that will do it, it's the strategy that we put in place altogether. And the strategy comes in place with all the European policies and with the national policies as well, national funding. So I already talked about the decision-making system, so the processing for the data. Infrastructure is extremely important, and I think the first Thomas was talking about the issues on bringing 57% of the farmers bring their data, transferring their data via USB. It is important that we enable the connectivity, that we enable interoperability, that we come out with common standards. And also broadband is extremely important to enable the rural areas to have access to the same opportunities than the cities, and to take really advantage of the digital revolution. Of course, digital skills and jobs coalition is extremely important, establishing advisory, educational paths for rural areas to make sure that we have educated people that can take advantage of the opportunities, but also important that we have a young generation that is prepared and interested to come and work on agriculture, that comes with these new tools, that is motivated and perhaps even finding new agri-food business, new opportunities that we don't know about. Um, of course, investment financing, access to land is the first priority for young farmers. They always mention extremely important, and then to have an innovative, friendly regulatory framework. This is important. There are two clear examples where sometimes EU regulation can be blocking to the uptake of technologies. One of that, for example, is the drones. For the moment, there is some technology that is being tested in order to use low risk substances in drones and to be spread. There is some testing, but we need to make sure that these then will be able to be deployed at the farms for real conditions. And the second, it's about, for example, new breeding techniques or new genomics techniques, where we will need to have access to this technology. But for the moment, the regulatory framework is not very friendly for the use of this technology by the farmers. And the final aspect, which is the objective of my presentation, is it's about trust and transparency on data sharing. And trust is the biggest value we can have in the agri-food chain, and it will be the fuel to ensure data sharing, creation of value, and that everyone will be able to benefit. And we need to put in place principles for data sharing. And we, as a farming community, we took the initiative to discuss with the agri-food chain about the use of data and what will be the principles the key principles to share this data in a trustful environment. And this is a voluntary initiative that was born 2 or 3 years ago, on I think April 2018, that was launched, and obviously is an initiative that now it will be we need to develop further, but um, it is something that actually got a better feedback that we even expected. And it's a voluntary initiative that brings together SEMA, the machinery organization. So John Deere is a member of SEMA, that brought together input companies, fertilizers, crop protection, animal health, seeds producers, FAFAC, young farmers, the CETAR, that brings the service providers that come to the farm very often to support farmers. They collect a lot of data as well, and of course the breeders, and crop protection. So this exercise was trying to bring some dialogue in terms of the principles to share data. And one of the key principles is that the farmer, the right on data produced on the farm or during the farm operations must be attributed to the farmer and may be used extensively by the farmer. This is important from the point of view of the farmer, because he makes a huge investment in terms of technology in his farm, and he must be able to have access to these data. He must be able to benefit from these data, and to have the right to attribute it to the different partners that he wants to work with. Because as you've seen in the first presentation, there are several clouds, there are several services out there, not always competing between themselves, but they can provide a benefit to the farmer. And it must have the leading role in controlling the access and use of the data, and benefit from sharing the data. Obviously, this doesn't affect only farmers, of course, because farmers are not the only ones that are creating data, collecting data. There are contractors that are collecting data. There's breeders that are producing data at the beginning of the chain, and they want to share data with the farmers. But it is also important to establish principles. Then if you want to share the data with a third party and the data has been generated in the farm, then you need to have their consent to ensure that that we have this trust. But we also try to address issues related with portability of data, with sensitive information, with security, and it was very important for us to be compatible with the GDPR. So here I cannot go on without thanking the European Commission for the support, for their analysis, for their input to make sure that we will not do anything that will not be compatible with the GDPR. And of course, thank them for referring to the code of conduct on the new Commission data strategy, for taking into account several of the principles on their governance proposal, data governance that is coming, and that we see it's building up on the good direction. We still, on this aspect, we still have to analyze internally together with our members on the proposal put forward. The Commission is very recent, but at least preliminary, we can see that there are many positive points of what has been done. And we are looking forward to continue collaborating with the Commission, and in particular on the data spaces, that it seems a very important part of that strategy, and that we very much welcome. And then, of course, important aspects also for farm machinery. It's about restricted access to machine data, sensitive data, the terms of liability that are clearly laid out, and of course, that the data must be collected for the specific purpose contract. Now, the code is very big, I admit, and sometimes it can be long to read, but we try to keep the lawyers out. So I hope the reading will not be very complex. But it is something that is very consensual along the agri-food chain, something that we will need to work out, of course. But there are things that we need to improve. One of them, we are trying to translate the code in several languages to make sure that everyone can have access to it. There are several projects that are working on technological solutions to ensure that the farmer doesn't have to press every button on right, say, okay, this data can go there, that there is a technological solution that will allow the data to flow according to the principles of the code of conduct. And of course, we will now try to ensure a compliance with European data governance, and we need to think how the code could evolve in the future in order to be compliant with European data governance. I don't want to conclude without underlining the role of agri-cooperatives in this aspect. They are structures that have been in place to serve their members, farmers, that are able to provide logistics, advisory, training, but also to bring together sometimes 2,000, 10,000, 20,000 farmers with their data and provide the structures to follow where the data is going, what to do with the data, how to process, how to provide value, and they play a very important role in this aspect. And I would like to thank you for your interest on the work of COPA and COGECA and the European farming community, and I'll be very happy to answer some of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for your presentation and sharing with us how you are approaching this topic. If I'm not mistaken, I think the farmer's consent is the essential element of the code of conduct. Do you think it's clear to farmers to what extent their consent is given?
Yeah, I think many farmers, it was important to raise their awareness related to this topic, and that's why we tried to come with a code. Unfortunately, it's not allowed by the law to actually create a contract model, and we could not include that in the code of conduct, but we came out with in the last page with many questions that they should ensure it's in the contract. And the fact, as you say, to provide the consent and to establish a contract with provisions on data sharing, it's a first step. They should be aware and they should ensure that this is included. I can give you an example of how the French farmers are trying to deal with this. They have created a white list where they work with many organizations that are collecting data. They make sure that these contracts are following the rules of the code of conduct, and if they do, then they are brought to a white list so the farmers know that these organizations that are collecting data, they respect the code of conduct and they should expect good behavior from them. So it's one of the solutions. I know that it's different across Europe, but it's one way of approaching it. That's good,
yeah. No, I think indeed the importance of awareness is also a very strong point. If everybody is more aware, then the caution is also better organized. Volkwin, are there other questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, so there are a lot of questions, so I just pick one. So the first one to Daniel is, to what extent are farmers prepared to pay extra for new technology?
Oh, that's very easy. As long as it's cost effective. We don't mind about the price. We mind whether it's gonna deliver and if we can have a return on it. Farming, or the investment in farming, usually it's a big investment with a very low return, and we need to do it in the long term, 15 and 20 years. We always need to take that in account. So every time a farmer makes an investment, it is not an easy solution, but if he sees that it will provide value, he will make that investment.
Okay, thank you. And another one is more related to the threat to privacy. So what is your opinion about the threat to privacy in agriculture, where so much data is geo-referenced? So in the case of automated decision making, this could also lead to undesirable practices of profiling, which further impedes the strategic position of individual farmers.
Yes, I agree. That was one of the points we would like to develop on the code of conduct. So there was a moment where we had to stop and make a line and say, okay, we need to publish the code of conduct. We cannot tackle everything, and profiling was one of the issues that we would like to develop in the future. But I agree, it's extremely important, and it's something that is very concerned for our members.
Yeah, and another question is related to innovation, because innovation is not always defined in the beginning. And so do you know beforehand what the specific purpose is of data sharing as stated in the contract?
So we should know part of what the data is. So we should know where the data is going for. Now, we cannot foresee that there will be elements of data that we are sharing that we didn't expect, that they will show us something that we never knew it was there. And I think that what will be the objective also to bring artificial intelligence in, is to actually look at the data and tell us something that we don't see, and that will lead to innovation. Because of course human eyes and brains have limits. So we expect, when we provide data from our breeding to our breeders, we expect them to come out with better genetic material that will provide better animals or plants for us to produce. But sometimes we'll provide data and they will come out with things that we didn't expect. And we hope that with, for example, artificial intelligence, that will happen more often. It could be good, it could be not so good, but it's very difficult sometimes to foresee what will be the result of innovation.
Yeah, and another, thank you for the answer. So, and another interesting question is about what role do you see for the government in data sharing?
For the government, very often one of the things that we expect is to create a level playing field by, for example, it's creating infrastructure. So we hope that all the farmers, regardless of their size, location, gender, doesn't matter, all the farmers, they should have access to, for example, to broadband, because that will enable them to actually choose what technology fits their specific climate, size, production method, and they will be able to contribute to improve their competitiveness, to deliver on environment, to tackle climate change. It will really be a level playing field. It will enable farmers to keep investing and to choose the best technology.
And would you expect, Daniel, these paying agencies, listening to the presentation of Mark, would you expect these paying agencies also to undersign the code of conduct?
No, this was basically between the agri-food chain to understand our common principles. A lot of the data we need to share with the paying agencies, we don't have a choice. We have to share.
Yeah.
But we do expect pay agencies to do the work they actually doing, testing new systems, providing new services, making it easier for farmers to provide their data, to enable farmers to achieve higher compliance. Because I think, as Mark has explained it, there are a lot of early warnings that can be done. Conditions change, and sometimes if farmers have better access to data, they can take better and early decisions. And I think that will be a work that we will welcome very much.
Okay, and now maybe, sorry, you get a comment? Oh, you go ahead, Mark, sorry.
No, I was just thinking with the data we as a payment agency retrieve from farmers are mainly based on the law. You know, we have it already written in the regulations what we can ask and what we can't. So I don't think a code of conduct with signing that would add anything to that.
Maybe a question to Thomas. Thomas,
Yes.
after hearing the presentation of Mark, how do you think farmers are looking at your ecosystem when it's possible that the data can also be shared for administrative and control issues at the government?
Yeah. I think what probably let's come back to Daniel. He said trust is very important. So I think first of all, the farmers, we need to still have a lot of room to increase the use of the cloud system of our operations center. That's why we we also built trust that the data is safe and that we not use the data. We use the data only in an aggregated and anonymized way to make our machines better. But I think we don't do anything with the agronomic data, with whatever yield data or whatever which are stored there. There are companies out there who are willing to pay for that. And there are even company startups in the US who say, Mr. Farmer, if you give us your data, we will aggregate them and sell them and you will get your fair share. We don't do that. We eventually could do that in the future. I'm not aware of any plans for that at the moment. We are going just through a major restructuring. Our goal was, first of all, to make data transfer easy, to increase the use of it. And if then the farmer can easily use the data, they are automatically in the cloud. He can decide. He has the data sovereignty. And that's why we also don't call it ownership, I think, because ownership is somehow strange, doesn't really fit to that. We say he can decide with whom he shares the data, and he can share it with the government to get subsidies. He can share it with his trusted advisor. He can share it with a company who sells his data and aggregates it. And longer term, eventually, we could also have that business model. At the moment, we don't have that. We don't charge the customers for it. We want to make that as easy as possible so that more farmers adopt precision farming, so to improve their profitability, to improve that also the environmental, the environment, to use not more fertilizer than needed, for example, and to apply that very accurate. I think that's our goal at the moment. Farmers are also not willing to pay for the usage of the cloud, at least not to pay John Deere, because they say, we paid a lot of money for your machines. And now you come back and say, just for data transfer to a cloud and for data storage there, you want to charge me whatever, €100 per year or whatever per machine. Are you crazy? So I think at the moment, this is all to make that the use of the data as easy and so that more farmers adopting it. If everybody is adopting it, that might change longer term, but that's not the case yet.
Another question maybe to all three of you, but first to Daniel. In this digitalization, what we see is, Thomas also presented this Data Connect, and we talked already about DKE, Auto, Agri-Router, and all kinds of initiatives. Are the farmers interested or pushing for standardization in this field of datafication?
In terms of standardization, we see the value of having common standards. We see that value. Of course, we are not the industry. We're not the ones that are responsible for creating these standards, but we encourage because it will make things easier in the future. We have very good examples of common standard that work very well in the past, and if we are looking for one single market in Europe and we see the value, I think to have a common standards where everyone is in the same page, that will enable creation of value.
Okay.
I think we as ACT Machinery, we definitely support also standards, but we have to agree with all players on a standard, and that sometimes is time consuming. Therefore, I think we are probably not as fast as a lot of our customers would like to see us to make progress. But Isobus is now a good standard. We are supporting a gateway and other areas. Not everything is standardized yet, but I think, like I tried to tell you at the beginning, without these standards and without openness, etc., we will not be successful. Our competitors always try to push us in the corner and say, okay, John Deere is the worldwide leader and they want to own everything and they are not open, etc. And I think in the meantime, we have proven that we are open and that we support standards. But also in our case, sometimes it's just taking a while to reprogram and to follow the standards and etc.
Yeah. And now, given the fact that governments, Mark presented that, are very interested in collecting those kind of data, also to reduce administrative burden. Mark, do you think you and your colleague paying agencies could work on a standard to get this whole data flow more in a single standard way?
Of course, we have been looking into how to or what standards to use, and but I was also triggered from who is responsible for setting standards, and that is a bit puzzling because I don't know the answer to that. Who is going to set the standards? So everybody wants to work with standards, but nobody is in the lead of setting the standards. In the NIVA project, of course, we have tried to look on what standards are usable and good to use. And for instance, we have been working with the eCrop model for our messages, which we have been developing in the NIVA project. And yeah, I would really like this to be how do you say this? Something which will snowball, which will make everybody will make use of this standard. So yeah, so I hope this will work this way. But yeah, it is about that everybody sees this as something which has a good potential and well, goes out and uses it.
Yeah, I think it's Thomas. I probably want to remark also when it comes to standards. Sometimes things just don't exist and somebody has to start. And we try to do that with a Data Connect initiative. We say as when two large players at least agree on one type of communication protocol, and then if others want to join, then they just also should use that protocol. And that's the easiest way. If you try to just bring everybody on one table and then debate, and you debate forever. So it needs to be also sometimes that somebody has to start or has to request, and if others want to join, then they have to follow that.
I hear a reaching hand, Thomas, to the paying agencies. You reach out to the paying agencies to join.
I think it's Data Connect is I think not for the paying agencies. It's just machine data at the moment, but nevertheless, I think it's I see we want to see not Data Connect, but into the connectivity to our operations center with our APIs, etc. Because there you can download data like what crop is grown on that field, etc. And if the farmer gives consent, then they can also the paying agencies can directly get data from there and can download it from there. But I think it's also, I'm not sure how many 100,000 hectares is, or how many farmers, and we try to count that, but I don't know the latest numbers, how many fields are in the system and how many customers are using it. So it would not be complete, as it would be only mainly John Deere customers, etc. And even if we are in many countries are the leading tractor company, that doesn't mean that we have the majority of the fields.
But in this case, it's also if something gets started, it may be this snowball which you need. So maybe now it's not complete, but it may be a beginning.
Yeah. like I said, the APIs, there we have a website, everything is documented, everything is there's even a what we call I think a sandbox where the programmers can try out, can program, can integrate the APIs, can download data which are not real to see if it works. And then if the customer gives access and gives consent, then they can use the real data.
That sounds good.
Okay. I'll look in this.
The clock is 5 now, so I think we have to round off. There are still some interesting questions. What I can promise to the audience is that we will collect these questions and try to answer them. As I mentioned before, our intention is to write a small report, and maybe we can take up your questions there as well in this report. So you'll find your answers later on. First of all, thank you very much, Thomas, Daniel, and Mark, for your nice presentations and good interventions on this late Thursday afternoon. I think it was very good to have these 3 viewpoints from the industry, from the government, and from the farmers community to look at how they look at the whole issue of data sharing. And I think there's still some work, some ground to cover to get it all finished and related and flowing in the right way. But I think the challenges are there, the opportunities are there. Now it's just a matter of getting to make it work. And this is something I think we will be busy with for the coming next years, I'm sure. So thank you very much again for your contributions.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's good. That's good. I'd like to point out to you that we have 2 more webinars in January. On the 19th, we have one on the FAST tool, the sustainability tool, and farm management information systems link to government systems. So that is, I'm sure you will get invited for that. And on the 21st of January, we have another one with about very, very high resolution satellite imagery, which I dubbed the small title, "You Cannot Hide for the Satellite." But you will be invited for that too, I'm sure, and it will be very interesting. And we will continue discussing this topic of digital rights in those fields too. So thank you very much to the presenters. Thank you very much to the audience. Thank you very much to Aerovision for making this webinar possible and hosting it. And I wish you all a nice evening, good Christmas, stay safe, and look forward to see you next year.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Okay,
thank you,
same for you.
Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, and have a great day and good rest of the year.
Yes, you as well.
And stay healthy, and yeah.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.